let's start with the Jets. They have the 2nd and 23rd overall pick. The 23rd pick, courtesy of the Seahawks, as part of the Jamal Adams trade. 10 total picks, tied for third most in the draft. The Jets can't leave draft weekend without addressing what, Chris?
I think the biggest one for me, Mike, is corner. That's the one place I look at their roster. And not to say, I mean, again, we know at pick number 2 they're taking Zach Wilson. But you go later down the first round, pick 23, that could be, corner territory when you get into that conversation there. But that's the one thing I look at their roster to go, there's nothing there as of right now to make you feel comfortable as a head coach, a defensive coordinator right there, to where you think you got a guy that can cover any, top-tier type receiver in a big situation man-to-man, let alone, even though I know they're going to be a very big zone team, really not even proven commodities that you can trust in that aspect yet either there on that Jets roster. So that's why I go corner more than any other position.
If Caleb Farley slips down to 23, is that one of those where you sprint to the podium?
You sprint, you dive, you tackle the guy making the announcement. You go, hurry up, speak this out of your mouth now. And that's, that'd be interesting with Caleb Farley, with some of the issues he's got. We talked about it last week, the COVID opt-out, 2 back surgeries, all of that. Will he be on the board there at that time? That would be unbelievable. But, yeah, I would think somewhere in this first 2 rounds, the Jets definitely exhaust one of their – they have 4 picks, I believe, right, in the first 2 rounds. One of them is going to be on a corner. I would be shocked if no.
I think, though, that if you're going to use the 2nd overall pick on a potential franchise quarterback, the guy that would be the first true franchise quarterback since Joe Namath, you got to have some help around him.
Right.
And you got to help him have the ability to get the ball to the help that's around him. The offensive line's still not where it needs to be. I know Mekhi Becton was a great addition right last year, but that's one guy. One thing we've learned, left tackle isn't the end-all, be-all, because you got 4 other spots on the offensive line that could stink. All you need to find is one that becomes the sieve through which the defense pours its way into the backfield. But whether it's offensive line, whether it's – and you don't have to reach. You don't have to go 23rd overall pick on a receiver or a running back.
No.
But that's – I just think, remember last year it was all defensive draft for the Panthers?
Right.
I wouldn't be upset if the Jets went all offensive draft this year. Now, 10 picks, you could get a defensive player from time to time, but they got to go heavy on offense to put weapons around Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would think that's going to be a big focus. They spent a lot of money in free agency on the defensive side of the ball to where that, Mike, to like what you're saying right there, that seems to be the plan of attack. And they got a lot of flexibility there. End of the first round, early second, those picks there, when you talk about pick 23 and then pick 34, yeah, you could distribute that any way you want. Really, you should have a really quality receiver, corner, or offensive lineman on the board at either one of those picks in round 2. And really in round 3, I think you really still got a chance of getting some quality offensive linemen and a good receiver in that round as well with those 2 picks. So they should be able to bolster their roster. But I'm excited to see their approach altogether, Mike. And I would think that, yes, let's not make the mistake we've talked about or that they made with Sam Darnold. If you're going to draft a quarterback at 2, start giving them lots of weapons to play with. They did that with Corey Davis at receiver and free agency. They could certainly add some more.
Yeah, and it's that balance between adding receivers and running backs versus adding offensive linemen, because you got to protect the franchise quarterback if he indeed becomes one. Miami Dolphins, 6th and 18th picks in round 1, 2 second-round picks, 4 picks in the top 50. They can't leave draft weekend without addressing what, Chris?
I mean, I think it's a wide receiver. I think at some point, and again, I would expect it to be somewhere in the first round with one of those 2 picks that we see one of the top receivers come off the board to them. That, to me, would be the big thing. Again, we just talked about it. Yeah, you got a young quarterback. You want to make it work. It didn't look great that first year. You want to get people like me who question, Tua and how successful he can be. Start putting some people that are talented around him. So I think that's where I look at, the Dolphins more than anything and go, no, they need a big playmaking, wide receiver, catch guy, whatever. Maybe that's a Kyle Pitts as a pass catcher, but I would think it's somebody that can make Tua in the pass game more dangerous.
I'd like to see them, much like I feel with the Steelers, get a running back. And I know that this isn't the Brian Flores way, because it's not the Patriot way. You like to have a revolving door of a bunch of running backs, and that makes sense from health concern. It makes sense from financial concern. But sometimes, like when you're trying to boost a young quarterback, if you get a badass tailback who can be on the field every down, who is going to help energize your offense that way, and you run to set up the pass, it makes it easier for Tua to set up and pass. If you have a running back that's going to put defenses on their heels, and there's always guys who come out and make an impact right away. You got to block for them. You got to hope they know how to hold on to the football. You got to trust them with blitz pickups. But if you get one of those guys, and I'm not saying round 1, round 2, you got those 2 second-round picks, wait till round 2, get a guy who can come in and really help take the heat off of the passing game. I think that's what they need to do.
I hear you there. There's no doubt. Listen, they invested some key pieces in the draft last year in the offensive line. They drafted a first-round left tackle from USC, a first-round, guard/tackle out of Louisiana Tech. They gave Jesse Davis, one of their offensive linemen, a little more money at the end of the season or right when the season ended. So they are set up as far as the offensive line to, be better and better. And I'm with you. And then I think, to your point, Mike, where they're sitting, I'm just trying to make sure here that I'm seeing this right. Like the Dolphins are pick 50 in the second round? There's going to be a good running back on the board for them to take. But I'm with you there. That is definitely a need for their football team right now. There's no guy you look at their roster, right, Mike, where you go, oh, wait, that's the guy. They're good. They're good at the running back position. They're definitely not good. They need a difference maker. I'm with you there all the way.
All right, New England Patriots have the 15th overall pick. That doesn't happen very often. Here's Coach Bill Belichick from last week, meeting with reporters. Do we have the Belichick sound? We don't have the Belichick. Okay, we'll get the Belichick sound. The Belichick sound is coming. We will fill until the Belichick sound is ready. Happy birthday, by the way, on a belated basis to Bill Belichick. Now we have Bill Belichick from last week talking about the Patriots uncharacteristically drafting in the mid part of round 1.
I think that each draft's a little bit different, and so each year is a little bit different. But all that being said, at 15, I think we could eliminate a few players that won't be at 15. And then you could look at a couple scenarios and say, well, if these 3 players are there, which one would we take? If these other 3 different players were there, which one would you take? You go through that exercise and talk about that. But I would say normally now there's less options at 15 than there are 28, 30, 31, some other spots that we've drafted from. But I would say normally something will happen, and there could very well be a player there that either you don't expect to be there, or maybe he is a couple spots, maybe at 12, 13, he's still on the board, and you really thought that he'd be gone in the top 6, 7 picks. And then then the question comes, do you move up and try to get that player that's fallen a little bit?
He's given us some clues there as to
Sounds
what
like he's done a study on that, how those top 15 picks flush out, huh? Doesn't it sound like that?
Well, the higher you draft, the easier it is to fill out all the possible permutations of how the picks are going to go.
Right.
And it sounds like if maybe a quarterback sneaks past the top 10 and into 11, 12, 13 territory, then that's when somebody's going to be getting a phone call, whether it's Joe Judge at number 11, getting a phone call, Judge and Gettleman, the coach and GM respectively with the New York Giants, there at number 11, whether it's Howie Roseman at number 12.
Right.
Although there's some chatter of the Eagles trying to get back into round 1. I just wonder whether that's all just a setup, and it's Brian Flores, the Dolphins coach, who gets a call at number 6 if Lance is still there, Trey Lance is still there, or maybe even a Justin Fields at 6. I can't imagine that happening because it's the same division, but remember, it was Drew Bledsoe who was traded by Bill Belichick 20 years ago to the Buffalo Bills for a first-round pick. So I think Belichick is willing to forget about who he's doing business with. If there's a move he wants to make, even if it's a rival, If that helps him get the guy he wants, he'll go get the guy he wants. The question is, how high would he go, and who is the guy he wants? And those are the things we're not going to know until it happens.
Yeah, no, you're not. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Mike, in the fact that I don't think he's going to care about doing business with somebody in the division or anything like that. You know, if he looks at it like, hey, this is the right price, they're not trying to hold my feet over the fire, and I have this need to move to trade up and do that, I don't think he's going to care. He's going to do what he's best for his own football team as far as that conversation goes. And, you know, again, that's why I took Trey Lance with New England before in our last little exercise at the top of the hour. That's, to me, I can envision that happening. You know, Lance being on the board, you know, in the early teens, 10, 11, somewhere in there, and Belichick going, okay, wait, I like this guy. And, you know, if we're going to talk about the position I think the Patriots need more than any going in this draft, it is quarterback. They got to have some sort of quarterback, whether it's a quarterback of the future, maybe even the backup quarterback as we go forward, because I don't know, you know, where Jarrett Stidham stands. But either way, I think quarterback has to be addressed within this draft. And I would think the Patriots are thinking about it at 15. And if not at 15, maybe making a move, you know, in the second round to get up there towards the end of the first or top of the second to make a move to get a quarterback then.
It's also possible to read his comments where he seems to be hinting very strongly that if one of the quarterbacks slips past 10, he may make a move up. He may actually be hoping that all 5 guys definitely are gone by the time he's on the clock at 15 because he wants to see how far he can take it with Cam Newton. We act like Cam Newton's been around forever. He was drafted 10 years ago this month.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of gas in the tank. And my understanding is Belichick loves Cam Newton, loves everything about Cam Newton. Doesn't love the fact that he got COVID last year and it kind of threw the season off the rails, but loves what Cam Newton has done, loves what he can do, loves how he's respected by the teammates. And remember, it's that personality. We said last year when he signed with the Patriots, it was the perfect personality to walk in the door as the quarterback after Tom Brady walked out. So they may not feel that compulsion to go after one of the top quarterbacks. It may be, like you said, a guy later that they can develop and maybe flip if need be. We saw him flip Ryan Mallett. We saw him flip Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's right.
You get a guy
Jacoby Brissett.
round 3, round 4 as a guy you develop. But if Cam Newton has this tremendous second act in his 30s with the Patriots, you can move on from that guy in a couple years.
Yeah, I listen, I don't think they're not going to, like, you know, sell the house and the kitchen sink and everything like that just to get a quarterback because they need a quarterback. No, they're never going to be like that. Belichick's not going to overpay for anything. And, you know, I'll second, you know, what you said. Yeah, anything I've ever gotten from New England is how much they like Cam Newton and respect him and everything, you know, that he brought to the table, like you said. So I don't think they're scared in any way with the fact that he's their quarterback and he could be their quarterback going into this year, that they think they could still be successful with him. There's no doubt. I do expect them to address the quarterback situation at some point during the draft. It's just when, and it's going to be interesting to see who and when they make that move for.
I think they definitely need to go corner because next year either Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson won't be there. Possibly both won't be there. Jackson last week signing his 1-year tender as a restricted free agent, $3.5 million thereabouts. Free agent, unrestricted next year unless they would use the franchise tag, which they likely won't do. He walks away. They better be ready to plug someone else in. And this is an opportunity at some point in this draft to get a guy that they would feel good about putting on the field as a starter in year 2.
I would think that they're thinking of that, certainly. I mean, yeah, it's a position they're always looking to replenish or keep it fresh with talented young bodies and everything like that. They're still pretty deep there at that position. There's no doubt, you know, but you're right. They got to worry about J.C. Jackson. Hey, he's big time. He plays like he did last year. You're going to have to pay him, you know, top of the market type money for the corner position. And, Mike, just while we're on that, like, no joke, that whole, like, second-round tender stuff and all that crap's got to go. You want to talk about a stupid thing, a stupid vehicle that kills NFL players. Like, you want to talk about, that's like, it's collusion. Oh, we're going to sign him as a high tender because we know, wink, wink, there's an unwritten rule where you don't really try to sign those kind of guys from us. We don't. It's BS, the whole second and third round tender thing. Like, why? Why wouldn't someone out there this year who really needs a corner not have like offered J.C. Jackson money and try to stick it to the Patriots? Oh, you want to sign all these free agents? Oh, try to now pay J.C. Jackson along with that. You know, first off, I wouldn't be playing that game if I was a GM or a coach. I'd be like, no, this rule's here. Screw your player. I don't care what you tender to them. We're going to try to steal him. Deal with it. Screw off. And it's BS from the player standpoint. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. It's been bothering me for a while.
We talked about this last week on PFTPM, and I wrote about it. J.C. Jackson's camp called every team, and they would have signed any offer sheet they'd gotten that was more than what the Patriots were offering this year, even on a one-year deal, multi-year deal. Make us an offer. No one would do it. And there's that sense out there, not universally, but there is that sense that we don't touch theirs.
Yes.
They don't touch ours.
That's BS.
The second-round tender came along 10 years ago. No player with a second-round tender, restricted free agent, has ever signed an offer sheet with another team. And it makes even more ludicrous the fact that the Rams used a first-round tender on cornerback Darius Williams and paid him an extra $1.5 million when they didn't have to. Nobody's touching second-round players. They're just not doing it. And if they were ever going to do it, they were going to do it with J.C. Jackson. So that is a strange development. You're right, that needs to go. But the CBA's around for another decade. Buffalo Bills, real quickly, because they're stocked. They don't have a fourth-round pick this year. They get their first-round pick back. Last year, their first-round pick became Stephon Diggs. What's their number one need going into this draft?
I mean, I look at Buffalo, and I think it's pretty easy for me where I just go, like, edge. They need people to come off the edge. They're just not enough. You know, Jerry Hughes up there in age. You know, there's no force as far as anybody notable that you worry about. You know, A.J. Epinesa, they drafted him last year in the second round. He's not really a great pass rusher that way. You know, Mario Addison didn't deliver for them in a big way last year. They need something along those lines. They need a guy who can come off the edge and be a one-on-one mismatch nightmare and be that type of football player for their defense. To me, that's something they got to address at some point in the early first rounds.
I hate to be a broken record on this, and I'm a firm believer in not having too much emotion, draft capital, and money tied up in one position. But they've got their Jim Kelly, they've got their Andre Reed. They really could use a Thurman Thomas.
Yeah,
they really could. You know,
well, that's what they're hoping for. Zach Moss, right? They drafted him last year in the second round, and they need him to you know, be a force. You're right. I mean, that's certainly something they can't. They can't, like, what I think you're getting to, Mike, and we had this conversation during the season last year a little bit. Like, that, I don't think they can realistically just say, are we going to really play that way again, where it's just going to be, you're going to drop back 40-plus times, not even worry about the run game. Remember, like, they played Seattle, and Seattle was like, remember Pete Carroll's comments after the game? He's like, yeah, they didn't even really care about the run. Like, they just threw it every play. Like, I think he was that to me is not realistic, and I can't imagine McDermott wanting to play that style of football. Like, to your point, the run game's got to be more effective this year for Buffalo.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now that they know what Josh Allen can do, the question is figuring out how to do it the best possible way and balancing. You got to have balance in that offense, or you're not going to be able to get it done when the games get as important as we saw the Bills play, the most meaningful games they've played in a very, very long time, and they should be back at that level again.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.